for University of Utah Medical Center, plat number 2, located approximately 337 West, 1000 North. Travis Perry and Sean, I'm sorry, how do you pronounce that? Sean Sanchi? Scanchi is the applicant. This is presented by Nora Shepard. Is Nora here today?
Yeah, to excuse Nora, she had a previous commitment tonight, so I will be filling in for Nora.
Turn the time over to David Stroud.
So the request tonight is for a preliminary plat 2. This is at the University of Utah Community Plan, 337 West, 1000 North. You can see here in the aerial where that exactly sits. This will be the property at Market and Pioneer Crossing. And so they're proposing to create a new subdivision, a single one-lot subdivision known as Parcel 2 of the Medical Center Plan. This parcel contains 10.06 acres and will have 69.5 density ERUs as well as 150,000 square feet of office. And that goes in line with what's been approved there already. The community plan for the medical center was approved earlier in 2017 with a total of 300,000 square feet and 139 ERUs. And then the village plan too, which is where the subdivision is located, was approved for 150,000 square feet and 69.5 ERUs, which is what the applicant would be proposing to locate on the site. Here you see the subdivision plat, again just a single one-lot subdivision. And then the motion would be, because it does meet the ordinance, it meets the community plan, it meets the village plan, would be a motion to approve. Send a recommendation on to the city council for approval.
Thank you, David. Is the applicant here? And for the record, could you introduce yourself and provide your address, please? Both of you.
Travis Perry, 4179 Riverboat Road in Salt Lake City.
Dwayne Palmer, representing University of Utah, 516 South, 1025 West in Farmington.
Thank you. Dwayne and Travis, did you have anything to add to the presentation?
No, we don't. We appreciate staff and their review. We have received comments from engineering and are responding to those comments now. Great.
This is a public hearing for item number 5, preliminary plat for University of Utah Medical Center, plat 2. If there's any public comment, we will open up public comment at this time. Okay, given that we don't have any public comment for item number 5, we will close that at this time and turn it over to the Planning Commission for comment.
Is the applicant prepared to meet or comply with all the conditions in the planning staff and engineering report?
Yes, we are.
Okay. And then I just had one more comment. In the vicinity map in the staff packet that we received, the same thing. Yeah, the river is marked as Provo River. I don't think it's Provo. I think that should be the Jordan River. So I just wanted to point that out.
We will correct that on the plat, because I'm sure that's where Nora clipped that from, was the plat. So we'll have them correct that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's it. Thank you for making our job easy by applying to the ordinances and such. Thanks.
Okay, any other comments from Planning Commission? None. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to forward a positive recommendation to the City Council on the University of Utah Phase 2 preliminary plat as outlined in Exhibit A with the findings and conditions that are found in the staff report.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Okay, let's move on to item number 6. This is a public hearing, a site plan for Golden Lux, located at 1531 North Exchange Drive. Mary Ching Hui Lin is the applicant, and we'll turn the time over to Sarah Carroll for our presentation.
Okay, the map here indicates the location. It's just north of Walmart and west of Bank of American Fork. And then here's the site that's being proposed. If you look at the checklist and the staff report, we actually don't have any conditions other than just that they meet the code. So they were very thorough and worked with staff really well on it, complying with everything ahead of time. And then if you could go to the next slide. So this is their sign layout. They're showing where their monument sign will be. That does comply with code, and then the building signs will come back later. And if you could, and then here's the trash enclosure. That meets code as well. And the landscape plan also, and then the elevations. And then if you could go, and staff recommends approval with the conditions in the staff report.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant here? Hi there. Could you introduce yourselves and provide your address for the record?
Hi, good evening. My name is Mary Chin Huilin Chen. Thank you.
Hello?
12487 South. Okay, 12487 South and 4000 West. Riverton, Utah. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mary.
My name is Brent Vincent. I'm the architect. My address is 401 East, 1700 South, Salt Lake City, Utah.
Hi, Mary and Brent. Did you want to add anything to the presentation tonight?
No, staff's been very good, especially coming in. We worked with Kara, and then she quit, and Sarah came in and really helped us through, and so it's been good. Had one little heart attack, but we're good.
Okay, well, this is a public hearing, so we will open up public comment on item number 6 at this time. If anybody has any comments or concerns for item number 6. Given that there aren't any, we'll close public comment at this time and open it up to the Planning Commission.
I just had one thing on page, I think it's 21, under planting standards and design. It says can comply. Then when I went through, I couldn't find the can comply. Am I missing something?
No, I verified that they meet all of those requirements.
Oh, okay. So we just need to cross that out?
Right, it does comply.
So that was the planting standards and design?
Yeah, planting standards in the site. It says right next to it can comply, but then everything in there,
Right.
that section says it complies.
That's what I thought too.
Okay. That's all I have, thanks.
Any others?
Okay. Is the applicant willing to comply with all conditions in city planning staff and engineers report?
Yes.
Okay. In the picture of the property with the parking lots and everything, I was wondering, would there be place for snow removal? So when snow is being pushed around, is there a place to like store it, or what are you planning to do with snow?
Well, the plantings will take some of it. Some of it may have to eat up a stall to store snow in until it melts.
Okay. So
Although
just put
with global warming, we won't have any snow, right?
pockets of it will be worse. Okay, so you just put it into a parking. Okay. Under the, this is for the staff, under the design review committee comments, it said that there's a planter strip in front of the drive-through that's not necessary. And I was wondering which one they're talking about, because I'd rather keep the planters if they're not in the way of traffic.
It's,
It's not necessary, but it's okay if they kept it?
Right.
Okay. So what's the applicant planning to do?
We just see that as advantageous so that if somebody's in the drive-up, somebody doesn't back into them. It's a backup preventer, you know.
So it's not a traffic issue if they keep it then?
No, it's not, because
Okay.
the backup is wide enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Also retains the customer so they can't leave.
So they can't leave.
That's
Is
the
there a
idea.
way to go
Sell more.
Okay. Okay, so my paging is under the old one, so I'm not sure where. This is under size for primary signage. This is again for the staff. Could you explain, please, what not exceed a cumulative total size equal to 8% of the facade? Okay, please. Okay, it says not to exceed a cumulative total sign equal to 8% of the facade, but all the signs, it looks like, are are greater than 15%. So how does that work out?
So that will be for the wall signs when those are proposed.
Okay, so that's
It
not
doesn't
actually-
apply to the monument sign, the one that goes in the ground. It just applies to the ones that goes on the building.
Okay,
And that'll be reviewed later since and all of those tenants aren't decided yet.
okay. And then I think in the same section, and again, I'm sorry I didn't have it written down. It says under the secondary signage, it says, I think it says, aren't the secondary signs 50% of facade? Not that it should be, secondary signs should be 50% of the primary sign.
Oh, that's correct. That's just an error in
Okay,
the
so I
way
think
it's
it's a
written
typo.
in the review.
Okay, because that'd be a big difference if they had to do it of the
Right.
facade. Okay. And that's it for me. Thank you. Thank you again for such a great, all the compliances and everything. It just makes it really easy for us. Thanks.
It does. Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. Any other comments? Commissioner Steele?
Yes, I'm looking at the site plan, and do you propose for 2 drive-throughs or just 1?
There's really one drive-through and one pickup window.
Where's the pickup window? Is it different?
So, so the pickup is for, you call ahead and order and then you come pick up, and that's here?
Yeah, there'd be no waiting. It would just be
And-
drive up, pick up.
And it doesn't have a menu board and an order board. So this one over here has a menu board and then a pickup window, but this one on this side of the building is just pickup only.
Okay,
Pre-ordered stuff.
okay. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but I'll see when you get it built. Because I was concerned about the fact that you did not have the 5 feet of protection against the building on that side. But if you're going to have a window there, then we don't have to have that. And that's, I think, what we said on the other side, that they have a little bit of landscaping against the building, and we don't require that.
Oh,
when it's
this
a
little area
drive-through.
here. Right, we don't need anything there when it's a pickup window.
And the one other thing I was just going to suggest is, in a case like this, it might be a good idea to have a sign saying one way only where you're going around the building, because if it's snowed or anything, you won't be able to see the markings on the street or on the parking lot. And the other thing is, I would hope that you would not remove snow into disabled parking spaces. Oh, it's never done, is it?
Never. No, of course not.
Okay, that's it.
All right, any other comments?
There was just a observation from the design review committee about the drive-through window. I don't know that, it's something that we necessarily care about, because we're cared about the code, except for we want your businesses to succeed in our community. So just make sure that you review that if you haven't already, just for the benefit of your business. And then I think Commissioner Kilgore mentioned it. Thank you for being thorough. It makes our jobs easier. It's easy for us to evaluate whether you're meeting code, and just seeing all the complies all the way down brought a smile to my face. And it should be an example for everyone who wants to come and get approval from this body, that if you're thorough and meet the code, it makes your life a lot easier. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Could you say that again? I'm just kidding.
You said it very well.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to forward a positive recommendation of the City Council for the Golden Lux site plan located on parcel 53-554-0002, and is shown in the exhibits with the finding and conditions in the staff report dated April 12, 2018.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any question on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cunningham. Okay, we're moving right along. Let's move on to item number 7. This is a public hearing for, well, hold on. Would this be the time, Kevin, that you wanted to switch these two?
Well, I just want to be courteous of other people that have come for public hearings, and I think since we have plenty of people here for all 4 items, let's just continue down the correct order.
Moving right along. Item number 7, public hearing, Title 19 amendment creating the mixed residential zone. This is city initiated, and who's covering for Nora?
Filling in for Nora again.
David Stroud.
Yes.
Time is yours.
So we're familiar with this. We looked at this in the past. You had a work session on it. There was no section of the code that allowed a developer to come in with a mixed residential zone or development unless you had at least 500 acres, and that was in the planned community zone. And so we see a need to fill a gap here, to provide some type of housing that can have a variety of types of units. And so we come up with a mixed residential zone, and the text you see here. And this is what you see here in the black. This would be the statement in the code, which is how we would define the mixed residential zone. Probably don't need to read it, but if you can just scan through it there. So kind of the summary of the mixed residential code, what we're going to do is allow mixed use of residential types in one zone. There will be a 50-acre minimum. Talking with the developers, they think that about 50 acres is where you can have a decent master plan community. Anything less than that kind of diminishes that desire, that look that you want for a master plan. Again, the PC zone, you can do it in the PC zone, but again, you need 500 acres to do something similar. So the mixed residential zone provides a mix of housing types, gives you various socioeconomic levels, characteristics, different types of units. You could have townhomes, you could have standalone, smaller single-family homes, you could have large ones. It just provides a good mix of different uses. That then does eliminate the need to go through the CP and VP process, which can be somewhat time-consuming and arduous for staff and for the applicant. Would require a neighborhood plan, and that would be part of an agreement, and a lot of rezones do end up having development agreements of some sort. And so you'd have a neighborhood plan in the agreement, and that neighborhood plan would identify a cohesive theme and design for the development. And so that development proposed, you could have 10 units an acre, or there could be 12 units an acre if you were adjacent to any potential transit stop. So again, you could have single-family, twin home, attached dwelling types all intermingled into one cohesive development. The neighborhood plan would identify minimum lot characteristics, size, things like that, lot width, lot locations, architecture, themes, roads, that sort of, basically would be a concept plan. You'd look at the concept plan and say, okay, here's where the single-family homes are, here's where the multifamily or the townhomes are located, and here are the roads, the open space. That would be contained in the neighborhood plan. Landscaping and open space would comply with Title 19, so there's nothing special requested as far as that goes, so it would act as any other standard development. Some of the things for discussion would be commercial uses in the MR zone. Now, when you get obviously a large group of homes, there may feel like the need to have some type of commercial development. So that would be a point of discussion. And they have some language here. We've been working on this code with D.R. Horton. A project of theirs actually is what instigated this, the need to find some sort of code that could identify and bring to the table what they want to do. They looked at legacy farms. To transpose legacy farms wouldn't work. And so that would need the community plan, village plan concept. And so they've come up with some language here. You see in the quotes there as far as, well, for the parking anyway, parking modifications. Amendment procedures, how do we amend the neighborhood plan? And then changes to the accessory structure setbacks would be all points of discussion here. So to add a section to the neighborhood plan, to amend the neighborhood plan, we looked at this and thought, well, when you have a community plan and a village plan, there are things that staff can approve. There are things that has to go through the planning commission and the city council. So major amendments, if we were to have a neighborhood plan that was approved, but they wanted to change the density or change the character, the theme, the architecture, that would be classified as a major amendment. That would have to come back through planning commission then on to the city council for approval. Minor amendments would be approved by the planning director, and that goes hand in hand with some of the existing community plans we have now. Minor amendments are handled at staff level. It's not at a level that needs to come to you for approval or recommendation. And so this would be the language we would add here for the neighborhood plan for requiring those amendments, which basically just kind of expounds on what I just talked about.
Is that in our packet?
No, we discussed it, Nora and I had discussed it today. We had talked about, she did not put it in there. I emailed her and thought, we probably ought to put something in there. So that would be in addition to what you see in your packet would be here. We feel that needs to be addressed. How do we handle amendments? How can we make it smooth for the city? How can we make it smooth for the developer to go through that process?
Is there any way that we can get something that we can read? It's very hard to read that from up there. And if we can have it in front of us so we can read it.
Yeah, we can see if we can print something off here.
Commissioner Steele, I'm going to make a point that we come back to this and actually read it in, because I want to see that. That was something one of the points I wanted to make. There were some references in the grid to neighborhood plan, and so we'll come back to that after they're presented and after we've talked.
Should be similar.
I just want to make sure I've got something I can see.
Public.
They are very similar to what we've been doing with amendments to community plans and village plans. Similar criteria, just so that you're aware of where the idea came from as far as what the criteria would be for that amendment.
And that's language located in the PC zone right now of Title 19.
Right.
They would like to talk about different setbacks for accessory structures. And so they have their proposals here of the front side, interior side, rear setbacks. Obviously, at this point, we'd like to see a positive recommendation go on to the City Council. And if that's the case, that will go to the Council next Tuesday. So we would, if it is positive, we would have to do a report of action to go on to the City Council. And with the findings and any conditions that the Planning Commission would see fit. Now we can pull up the entire code as well. If you want to do that, we can close this screen here and bring it up to discuss and show.
Is that the end of your presentation, David?
Well, if you want to, I can wait now, but if you want to go through page by page here of the proposed text, we can do that as well, or what you want to go for.
I think for the benefit of the public and for us, we need to see that as part of the presentation. So there's two things we need to see: that neighborhood plan detail and the setbacks for the accessory buildings that we just saw.
Okay.
So if you could read those in, that'd be great.
Okay. Let's go back here. So as far as the accessory structures, they propose that the front setback for an accessory structure be 10 feet behind the principal structure setback, which typically is going to range probably from 20 to 25. So you're probably going to see accessory structures anywhere from 30 to 35 feet back. The street side setback would be 10 feet, with the interior side and rear setback both being 3 feet.
For accessory.
This is not the house.
Accessory.
This is
You want to put a shed in your backyard?
Shed.
This is a shed.
So at 3 feet, would that be any issue for like any public easements or anything like that?
If a PUE is in place, and if the structure would require a building permit, then we could not approve a building permit for a structure over an easement. Smaller ones would be okay.
Okay.
Technically, you could still portable, you're not going to, but theoretically, they could still be moved. But we can't approve a building permit for a structure on top of an easement.
So is there no strict standard for how wide an easement is?
Easements are typically 5 feet.
Okay.
And
so this might be
and we can discuss this with DR Hort, is why they are suggesting 3 when we're going to have public utility easements that most likely will be 5.
Yeah, that's the only concern I have, because we're basically saying, let's build it so that they will have to come back and we'll have to deny it.
Another
that seems kind of silly.
option could be to default to the standard code, which is if it needs a building permit, so over 200 square feet or larger, then it has to be outside of the easement. But if it's smaller than that, they can put it over the easement. That's what's in the code for anything else.
I would be okay.
And then that would actually probably default to that anyway. Because we still, if it's less than 200, they can go 3, but it already says in the code that we can't approve one if it's 200 or greater on an easement, so they'd still have to set back probably 5 feet then. So it kind of self-regulates.
Can I ask, it's almost like we've turned it over to the Planning Commission. The 10 feet behind the principal structure, really, I mean, if I have my fence that is along the same line of the front of my house, I can't put a shed right next to that behind the fence? I have to put it 10 feet beyond that?
On this proposal, yes.
So I'd be more lenient towards letting people put shed even closer, especially if it's fenced in. Anyway, so can we look at the other details of the neighborhood plan? And perhaps you could zoom in a little bit.
You want me to read this, you said?
Yes.
Okay. So the amendment language proposed to allow how the process we would go through to amend a neighborhood plan would be for major amendments. If an amendment is deemed major by the planning director, it will be processed in the same manner as the original neighborhood plan. Major amendments are modifications that change the intent of the neighborhood plan, such as 1, those that significantly change the character or architecture of the neighborhood plan; 2, those that increase residential density and non-residential intensity; 3, those that materially reduce the amount of land dedicated to parks, trails, public use space, natural areas, or public facilities as shown on the approved neighborhood plan; and B, minor amendments. Minor amendments are accomplished administratively by the planning director. Minor amendments include simple modifications to text or exhibits, such as minor changes in the conceptual location of streets, public improvements, or infrastructure; minor changes in the configuration or size of parcels. Looks like I run a little numbering system here. 3, transfers of density as described within the neighborhood plan. Then next should be 4, minor modifications of land use boundaries; and 5, interpretations that facilitate or streamline the approval of unlisted uses that are similar in nature and impact to listed uses.
Could you also touch on when the neighborhood plan would initially be brought forward?
That would typically come by at the time. If you're going to rezone to MR, you're going to want to know, okay, what are we going to get? So that neighborhood plan would have to go along with the rezone.
Okay. Yeah, because I noticed in the grid, there's a few things in there that say per neighborhood plan, which is lot size, which is setbacks for the house. There's a few things in there. Minimum lot width, minimum lot frontage, and it would just be nice to know. I mean, for the public, if you want to have any say into what happens in these neighborhood plans, when we notice and we're actually passing a neighborhood plan, that's when we're setting the code for the density, and so.
So this is what you see here. The red lines are what we would add to the current existing code. So we then create obviously the mixed residential zone, call it MR. So anything in red would be new. Black is already within the code right now.
Okay.
And of course, how we define mixed residential. Do you want to go through this whole, where the red lines are, the additions?
Are there any changes from the last time that we saw this?
I don't think anything substantial. I think we've changed the format to make it a little more readable. Again, the 10 to 12 an acre, your minimum lot size per neighborhood plans. Let me reduce this a bit so we can see the.
What's the feeling of the planning commission? Do you want to see all the details, or just having a high-level overview?
No, because I thought the red lines were in the staff packet, so I don't think we need to go through them. But that accessory one wasn't.
Yeah, the accessory and the amendments. Yes.
That's why I thought that those were good to read.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to go through here because it was already in the staff packet and available to the public.
Is that everybody's feeling? Okay. Well, thank you for your presentation, David. This is public hearing for item number 7, Title 19 Amendment Creating the Mixed Residential Zone, which is city initiated. We will open up public comment at this time. And I would like to mention those who are interested or are stakeholders or are potentially going to record under this zone, this is your time too. So we'll open up public comment at this time.
Chriselle Travis, D.R. Horton, 12351 South Gateway Park Place, Draper, 84042. Oh, that's Linden, 84020. That's Draper. All right. So our only comment, and David did a great job presenting, we would like to discuss, besides those two that he just read into the record, the parking amendment, that we've submitted language that would allow. And I can read what we're asking for. We're asking that it be added at section 7B, and it would become item 5. We're asking that it say, parking standards are intended to reinforce the transportation element of the MR zone. with its starting point being addressed by the city standards as identified in section 19.09. Opportunities for reductions in parking requirements are encouraged and may be sought when justification for the reduction can be identified and approved by the city council, i.e. neighborhoods in proximity to transit-oriented developments. So, or transit stations, transit, etc. So he brought that up. We'd like to hear a discussion in your opinion on that. It gives, in our opinion, it gives us the ability to consider each MR zone for its location, and it wouldn't be approved until neighborhood plan. So this just gives the opportunity for those things to be presented in a neighborhood plan. It doesn't change any of your standards, and so we'd like to hear your opinion on that. But other than that, we're happy and thankful for the cooperation, and Nora's done a great job. We agree with everything else in there. We just ask that this section be added. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay, we will close public comment at this time. And we'll open up to the Planning Commission for comments. Commissioner Steele, I can tell you want to say something.
Well, I have a whole list, so.
Go ahead.
Because we're encouraging some commercial in some of the areas, I'd like to see this say something other than mixed residential, because it does throw somebody off if they're looking at this, thinking they cannot put anything but residential. And I suggested, and we've used all the terms we have. What if we put that this was a planned community from 50 to 500 acres? And then the planned community can be, then we have a little more flexibility with these parcels of land. And we don't have to go to the community, halfway into a community plan type situation. So anyway, that's one suggestion, and if any of the Planning Commission disagrees, let me know.
I disagree.
We might need a different, well, we already have a planned community zone. So the community plans are in the PC zone, which is planned community, so we might need a different name than planned community.
Well, what if we said planned community 500 acres plus, and planned community 55?
But if you use planned community, even if you're differentiating it by size, I would immediately think, if I didn't know any better, that it would also have a community plan, a village plan, all those other plans, as opposed to a neighborhood plan.
That would be,
you have to say planning community, but it's different because it has a neighborhood plan instead of a community plan and all this stuff, and I think it's confusing that way.
But I do think that mixed residential is not the right term either. So I'd like to see something else come up with that.
Right, and I know we don't want to use mixed use. We have a mixed use zone, and we don't want to use that because a lot of times that's referred to, residential above commercial. Anyway, if you have suggestions, go ahead and voice those, and we can brainstorm that also.
Yeah, the working term obviously is mixed residential, because that's really what we're trying to do. We want to mix the residential types in there, and
But we do want to have the opportunity, if if it looks good, to be able to put the commercial in there.
And I guess at the time too, if someone's, going through the process, thinking out loud here, at the time that say the mixed residential comes for, someone's got 75 acres here. At the time, the council and the planning commission, they have the authority and the direction. Ultimately, the council will say, no, we're not going to approve this. They could say, we want to have some commercial here, and they could exclude some of the property to say, we need a commercial component here. If you're doing 50 acres, now if you look at 50 acres anywhere in the city on the south end of town, you got 50 acres of residential. Do you want commercial up there?
Sometimes they do.
It could be. It's going to be very site specific, I think. And so,
and I understand that.
Yeah.
I just hate to see us term it residential, because then when I was on the other side of the counter, if a client asked me to look at something, I would look at the mixed residential and think, well, that doesn't apply to me because we want to put in a little commercial. And even in your mixed residential explanation, you don't have anything about commercial. And I think at least that should have, and may have, support commercial or may have commercial. But if you've got two places that don't say anything about commercial, we may lose a good developer because they can't do what they think they want to. So that's the reason I hate to see it limited to residential. And this goes to what you just talked about. We have minimum setbacks for primary structures at 20 feet in the grid here. Okay, well, back up just a little bit. Oh, there it is, right there. Okay, and you have marked out the 10 for secondary. Somebody has, and that was my concern. Because you don't want a secondary building, and I don't know what they meant by secondary. It could mean a lot of things, so.
I would assume that was done by North, thinking that may make a reference to an accessory building, being a secondary building.
And you don't want that in front of your.
No, absolutely not.
Okay. I'm concerned about the height, and we've talked about this. For single family, I'd like to see us hold it at 40. That's giving them 5 feet more than what we are now. But then, if they wanted to build an apartment building that was over 45 feet, would we want to stop them?
Well, no, yeah, 45 would be the maximum period for anything. So in this zone at 45 feet, an apartment, say you do the 3 stories, whatever, but the roof on, your maximum height would be 40 feet. It's, in this type of development, honestly, you're not going to get a single-family home at 45 feet. You're not going to get one probably at 35 for the most part. You look at those ones we toured last night, I think they said the height on those ones we asked was 30.
35.
35. That's pretty significant height on a single-family home. Yeah.
The administrative decision, you maxed at 45, the way it's written.
Okay. I just don't want to see single family coming in at 40 or 45.
In all the years I've approved in other places and approved homes, the ones that come in that high are the 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 square foot houses. I don't think you're going to get that here.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah, I think that'll, again, will be another way you could say it's going to be self-regulating, I think.
Okay. I'd feel better if we spelled it out.
And then we can surely do that too.
Single family, and I would let them go a little higher, if, at 40, but then they can go, I would even agree to let it go higher than 45 feet if it was a larger apartment building. That might open up some more open space that would be beneficial. My thought on that only. Okay.
If you want that change, I'd recommend putting that in your motion. I see that being a pretty easy change. For single family, 35 feet. For multifamily, whatever you want that to be.
Okay. Can you help me remember that? In the uses that have been proposed for commercial uses in the MR zone, it seems to be only those which we would normally allow in a residential zone, non-residential uses in a residential zone. And it doesn't cover the types of commercial that you would think about in a little bit of commercial in a mixed neighborhood. It doesn't say anything about a sandwich shop, an ice cream store. Anything that's in neighborhood commercial is not listed in this. And I think we ought to go through and talk about what would be proper, or just say the uses that are in the neighborhood zone, neighborhood commercial zone. because I don't think we're going to get a riding arena in there. Let's see if I have anything else on that. Oh, and I was asked about, what is the lot size for neighborhood commercial? It's 15,000 square feet. That's not very big, but it's enough you could put a small business on it. Or you might even be able to put two if you had a sandwich shop and an ice cream shop, a deli. So it's a doable in a small scale. And then we get to the purpose and intent of the mixed residential zone. I have in my notes, and shall be required in areas near or adjacent to a transit stop. And before you all have a heart attack back there, I understand what the city council told you, and I understand that completely, and I understand that you would like to use the area at the waterfront for your commercial. And I heard loud and clear what they said. So, but this is for others. This is for our city code. I have non-residential uses which may support the neighborhood are a development opportunity and shall be required in areas near or adjacent to a transit stop or in a planned transit stop. For developments not near a transit stop, non-residential uses to support the neighborhood shall be encouraged. Mixed-use residential developments shall utilize walkable community planning. Okay, 19.04.13, mixed right there. No, it's at the bottom no, it's at the end of that paragraph that I added on to. Okay, you see where it says non-residential, see the which may, that's been, okay, which wasn't marked out on mine, so, non-residential uses which may support the neighborhood are a development opportunity. And then I have added, at least for discussion, and shall be required in areas near or adjacent to a transit stop or a planned transit stop. For developments for residential units not near a transit stop, uses to support the neighborhood shall be encouraged. Mixed-use residential developments shall utilize walkable community planning. I would like to add, and
Can I ask you then how you envision this? So say say a rapid bus, what is it? BRT stop is put in on Redwood Road right in front of or near Legacy Farms. And if you are requiring that the commercial is available right next to it, that it's required, then how would they have ever been able to design that development assuming that the BRT is not going to be here for another 5 years? And then that means that whole space in front of Redwood Road would have to be open? Is that what you're...
If it's planned, if the UTA has come through and said, this is going to be where we want to put a transit stop, then yes, you would, but this is only for mixed residential. So if you had Legacy Farms...
I understand, but remember, Legacy Farms was one of the... It couldn't find a a code equivalent, but luckily luckily it fell under the old plan, so they were able to do things that current code couldn't, and that's why the recommendation to create a mixed residential now, because Legacy Farms was kind of like the test case.
Okay.
So it'd be a similar situation. If Legacy Farms were to be built now, it'd be under the mixed residential code. And what we're saying now, I thought, isn't that the case?
No, they're
I thought that was the reason why we're doing this.
Well, the reason why we're doing this is they want to do, they can't do Legacy Farms on this property they're looking at because it's not big enough.
Right, yeah.
And then we don't have a code now that says they can do what they want, so
Right.
that's why we're working on this.
No, understood. So that's, actually, that's kind of that's what I meant. But the idea would be that that section then would have to stay open until, until some kind of transit point was created, which could be, 3 to 10 years, who knows? If there's another recession, it may take, forever before we get that. And so I'm just not sure how we're going to require that of a property owner.
Because we are a planning commission,
Yeah.
we need to be looking not today, not 5 years, not 10 years, 25 to 50 years, we ought to be looking that much forward. And as we...
But can't we do that by zoning? So if that's the case, then maybe we shouldn't allow mixed, we shouldn't allow zones where we have to force them to leave certain parcels open for who knows how long. Maybe that's how we plan, or how we act.
Maybe they use it as a park until such time as it comes in. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah,
ways.
so then, I know, then 5 years later, a developer comes back and then tears out the park?
It can be open space. I don't know. I just feel we're making a really grave error, or it won't affect me. It won't affect my husband. But down the road, it's going to be needed, because the future is what is being discussed, and it may come to pass that you don't own your own car.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. I just don't know how we can practically require a developer to do that. I just don't.
Well, I guess
in a single zone.
I guess what we could do is, if that came through and it seemed to be a sticking point, we could, maybe we have to amend the code at that point. But I think we're going to be getting some bus stops quite soon. And so I don't have that's the reason I put this in here.
Commissioner Steele, can I make a comment?
Yes.
So in the last couple of meetings, I've heard a lot about how much you want commercial within this zone.
Yes.
I've also heard your language saying that you want to require it. And I've also heard that we have an applicant who would like to have this kind of zoning that doesn't want to be required to do it because maybe there's no demand for it. So would you be amenable to the ability that we write the code in a way that allows a developer to put it in, but does not require them to do it?
I wouldn't require it any place other than the transit stops. Absolutely wouldn't. But I think the transit stops, and I'll go with the majority here, of course. But they're going to be able to count the area down by the waterfront as their commercial. It's what they were told, what was said at the council meeting.
Right, so I take
did I
public
hear it
transit.
wrong?
Well, the property by the waterfront will be owned by the city.
Yeah, and they said they could use that as their, at that.
You could get some small commercial type, seasonal type uses there. It would 4 or 5, maybe 4 months out of the year, 5 months out of the year.
But why does the city
I'm
do
trying
that,
to-
not the developer?
Oh,
Trying to
I agree.
envision what you're talking about, because I take public transit every day, and every train station, it's that property is owned by UTA, and it's fenced off from any kind of residential that's around it. I'm trying to envision how that would work. Would you have an opening in the fence where they can go into the neighborhood and use this commercial? Because right now there isn't any. In fact, there isn't even allowed a hot dog stand or a hot drink stand in any of the train stations or bus stations. I haven't seen any, anywhere in the city.
Okay, I'm thinking probably bigger than what we are right now. But in Portland, they have what is called the Beaverton Round, and it is an apartment building, and it is adjacent to the tracks.
Right.
And you walk out the front door, across the lawn, and onto the track, the metro or whatever they call it.
Right.
And the bottom has commercial. They have a gym, I think a Starbucks, and a few little things in that, underneath that. And so you could actually live in the apartment. You could take your mass transit into the city. You could come back and there would be a place to eat. There would be a place to exercise. You might even, I'm not sure, but I think there might be even a small grocery there. You pick up bread. So it can work, and it does
So
work.
like North Temple Station, they have a lot of high density that is right next to North Temple Station, and they do have a grocery area that they're planning to put into that area, so it's permitted, but it's not required of them to have that available to everyone.
They don't have the space. I'll drop it because I got more.
So I'm just proposing, this is what I'm proposing, something that would satisfy you and a potential developer, that we open it up in the code that allows someone to put it in, because the other use that we have by the waterfront, it does allow for some kind of commercial. We don't want to preclude, what's that?
Like an overlay.
Yeah, so we don't want to preclude them from the ability to put commercial in if that's what they want to do. But I don't want to require them to do something that may not have market demand.
I'm going to ask the staff.
Would that be something that would work with you?
Probably so. Do we not have a transit overlay district?
The TOD? Trans-oriented development overlay?
Overlay?
No.
Or
No.
I thought it was along. Okay, I have to look it up, but I won't do that now. It won't take that much time.
I think you're referring to something that used to be in the code, but I don't think we ever had that in the land use map. But at some point, we did have a reference to that in the code.
And I think we had it in the general plan, a reference to it. But I may be wrong.
You may be right, yeah. I think it was in the general plan, but never put in a map, possibly.
Okay, that may be true.
We can research that.
Thank you. Okay, and the open space. I am concerned about the language on that, because if we go with the Chapter 19, they would not have to, a large development like this would not have to provide any greater than 15% open space by code.
Are you looking at that as the average, where single family is 10 and multifamily is 20?
15.
Right, but right now it's 10 and 20. Isn't it 10, 20?
15. 10 and 15.
Okay.
Mixed use is 25, and the mixed waterfront is 25. So I think we need to cover ourselves a little bit and at least put a minimum of open space that shall be required, rather than just in 1919, the way you figure the amenities and everything, that part of it should be left. But we would probably want to put a minimum of at least 20%, maybe 25%, because it is so dense, these can be so dense. And maybe it's a thing where if you've got 10% or 10 units per acre, you can go with 20%, and if you go to 12 units per acre, then you go to 25% open space to stay in line with the mixed use a little bit.
Okay.
Does everybody understand that? Are you listening?
Could add that if you make the motion.
Oh, no. They were talking about. We were talking about the last item, to making sure that we do have in the code currently the ability to have commercial, and it does. Sorry, so that's where we were stuck.
Okay.
Please continue.
Any comments on the open space that I brought up?
Yes, because we don't know what kind of product a mixed-use developer will bring, I think it'd be hard to say there's got to be this kind of open space, except for saying something like 15% overall. You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah, I mean,
they don't bring in any single family. They decide to do all, multifamily or townhomes, or the other way around. What if it's all single family? Because mixed use, they're allowed to do whatever. And if that's the case, then I think it has to be a very simple standard for open space.
Okay, then I would say 20%. We've done that in our other.
yeah, I mean.
Time to speak is up.
And you create a new zone, you have the right to do that, to set a certain standard. You know, we do have zones right now, MF18, MF14, where you can go 14 and 18 units an acre, and those you'd only be required to have 15.
I know.
So
that's what
should this be treated, because you're not going to have that high a density there either. Should that be treated differently?
You wouldn't have 400 acres that could average out to R12.
Good. Now, I would think most of these MR zones are not going to be, I would say most are going to be less than, about the 100 acre mark. I would think that's probably going to be the bigger. This one here, I think is 130, I believe.
Well.
It could happen.
Well,
yeah, worst case scenario.
Then what would prevent, I don't know why anyone would, but what would prevent a developer from saying they want to use mixed residential to get away from a bunch of other stuff, but they're going to just put in wall-to-wall townhomes or 8-unit multifamily type of, or not multifamily, but 8-unit squished in high density stuff, just wall-to-wall all across the entire. Is there anything in the code that prevents that from happening? Because then 15% is too small.
Well,
but someone could do that in the MF18 or MF14 zone now.
But they won't do it over a large, right now.
Yeah, it won't be 400, well, I guess it could be.
It could
In
be.
theory, it could.
Yeah.
Chance of it happening are slim.
Okay.
But do we want to do a zone for worst case scenario that probably won't happen?
Well, actually, yeah, I do like legal strictures on the worst case scenario.
Yeah, I mean, going back to your comment earlier, I mean, yeah, we don't, you asked about in the code, we don't specify in the code where somebody could come in the mixed residential, if it's at the base of 10 per acre, yeah, they could come in all with townhomes. We don't specify a certain, okay, you have to have X number of single family percentage, X number you can do townhomes and stack, whatever. We don't, we leave that up to the market, up to the developer. Obviously, what we're looking at, what we looked in the past, they're not trying to maximize that either. Otherwise, they'd be doing all as, townhomes or all stacked if they could get it. It'll be market driven.
Well, that's because the zones prevent that from happening, right? Because if you have a certain...
Well, the density right now would be what they cap out at. It doesn't, because it doesn't specify a certain percentage of each type of unit.
And we saw some single-family homes that were really nice, and as far as having any personal open space, it was minuscule at best. So even if it were single-family in a mixed-use neighborhood, I think we really ought to think about a little bit more open space. And that's kind of in, I mean, they'll be asking us for either an overall average of R10 or R12. They can. So they're asking for something that's more than what we would normally allow. So I think it's within us to be able to say, if you're at R10, you have a certain amount. Or if you're going to go to R10, then it's 20%. I'll make it easy at 20%. But that goes along with the mixed use that we have and the waterfront overlay. Oh, let me get the easy ones out of the way. Oh, okay. Signage. Did you all read the signage part of it? They are wanting maximum of 45 feet. We have not allowed that in with anybody. including Legacy Farms, Wildflower, the Springs, the Crossing. We have, and for residential, we have required that the monument sign be kept, the verbiage on a monument sign, and it can be as, for more than 100 units, you can do 10 feet.
What was the max we had for Wildflower?
It was, I think it was 10 feet verbiage, and then they had,
At a monument?
yeah, an art piece that was 20.
Oh, that was commercial. We did 50, but that was commercial.
So I think we probably ought to hold with that and not allow the 45 feet for a sign structure.
What would you be comfortable, well, and we may want to have them expound on this, maybe this needs to be worded a little differently. I think what they're getting at is what you have down Legacy Farms.
It's like a water tower?
Yes, I think that's the intent of this. Maybe we need to tweak the wording.
Well, that.
Like how tall?
Have a logo of the development
How
on
tall
there.
is the water tower?
They came in with,
So
But that's not a
45
sign, that's an art piece.
Right, and it doesn't have a sign on it.
Our original intent was to be, sign in your code wouldn't allow it, so that's what we're trying. And not what we're proposing would be a sign, but lighthouse. Lighthouses are tall.
I still stay, we have required it of everybody else to limit it to 20 feet. You all had put the water tower in before we got our act together and actually codified it.
But the water tower doesn't have a sign on it.
And we hold those to 20 feet now,
Structure or the sign?
the structure.
We did separate the use of the water tower. It does not have a sign on it. They wanted one, we said no, and then it became an architectural structure, which allowed them to have it taller. So,
Yeah.
maybe we'll do something similar to that.
Okay, that's one for us to think about. Okay, this is going to be one that's hard for me to put into words. The only thing, the only way I could word it is under density. Property purchased for churches and schools, and it's purchased, cannot be used to determine the density, overall density, because that would become double dipping. If the developer decides that they will donate a church site or donate a site or a school, then they can count it for their density. But you don't want, saying, I have R12 and now we sold the church site, we want to put that amount of, if it were 10 acres and it was R12, it would be 10 acres, 12 to an acre, that'd be 120 units that you would move over and squeeze in somewhere else and still have your overall, So I don't know how to word that.
I'm guessing you already have the reference to code somewhere in some zone that, because I would like to compare it to what we currently have.
We did.
What do we allow today?
We had this as an issue with the right-of-way for the Mountain View corridor in Wildflower. You remember the
Yeah, because they did some calculations that were based upon that right away and deeding that land to UTA.
And so, like, I understand that D.R. Horton.
But you're talking about a church now.
Church, school.
So you're proposing code that doesn't currently exist in our
Right.
Our code, okay.
Because we're doing a new section of code. Kevin?
What was the question?
Okay. The one thing that,
David's been planning's been kind of overseeing this. I haven't been too involved with it.
okay,
But
What
if
I
you
was-
have a question, I'd be happy to answer it.
Okay, I have proposed that we put something in the code, and I guess the simplest way to put it is property purchased for schools and churches cannot be used to determine density. In other words, if you have a 10-acre parcel for a school, and they sell it for market value, and then come in and say, well, we lost 120 units, we want to stick them over here somewhere and squeeze them in, and we don't want to see that. We've heard us say no double dipping. How do we do that? Because we did it with the Wildflower on their thoroughfare, or Mountain View corridor. I don't know that we've ever done.
allowed that.
No, we didn't.
I'm
We
not
allowed-
sure, I can't,
We
help me
allowed some of that to
understand,
be open space.
help me understand why that's an issue, because they wouldn't be able to exceed their overall density anyway. And so whatever they, I mean, obviously that property that's then sold would not, and if it brings them over the density, then they're not compliant with the neighborhood plan. Am I understanding your concern?
Because
I don't quite understand, I'm sorry.
if
So what
you
you're
did-
trying to prevent is what?
The double dipping.
If I'm a developer and I sell off this land to a church or a school, that what are you trying to prevent? That I'm going to use that as my density, so I'm going to take that space that I sold, and I'm going to be able to use,
Equivalent units, you pack them in to roll unit count.
say that again?
That's
So
exactly.
I think the concern is just the equivalent units of selling that property to the church or the school, and you then take those equivalent units and pack it in somewhere else, so you maintain the overall, as if that land that you sold is still part of your development,
Which allows you to have higher density.
which allows you to have higher density. But if the density is set in the zone, I
Yeah,
don't know that you can exceed that.
yeah,
anyway.
if you say there's even number, say you've got 100 acres, and we're at 10 units an acre, so you have 1,000 units, you could theoretically build. So say a school site and a church sites come out, that takes out, let's just say 100. So now you're at 900 acres, you can develop, you're still, the whole overall project is still at, no, can't exceed 10 per acre, period.
Okay,
How
so
they choose to configure that, that's up to them.
I think you're saying then that the same thing that I am, that it wouldn't, the equivalent units would not go over, and because if they counted that to start with as part of their acreage, they need to then reduce that amount of units, I guess you'd say.
Well, like Kevin said, it's still, they still can't go over the 10 per acre. There's no way to grant them higher density.
The way that I think that this is being proposed is,
So what you're saying is, once you have sold off that church property or the school property, that you remove the square footage from those pieces out of the denominator.
right,
Yeah, you just lose those units.
that's right. And as far as overall density, I think that maybe the project that's going to come before us may have some areas that will exceed R10 or R12, but their overall density will be.
Right, because it's coming in as a master plan community, so we're looking at the entire picture, not just, okay, yeah, where you may have apartments by the transit stop, yeah, if you just take that acreage where the apartments, yeah, you're going to be over 10.
Right. Okay. I just don't want to see us find ourselves in a position that we actually have more units than, and they're squeezed in and they're counted. So I don't know how to word it, but I know that's a concern.
I think we've identified it tonight.
But it isn't a problem, though, I thought, because of the neighborhood plan will determine what the density for the project. So regardless if you sell off pieces, it's still going to have the same density plan that remains. I don't think that's an issue.
So what you're changing is the definition of the project. Once you sell off the land for the school or for the church, that's no longer part of the project, is what you're saying.
Yeah, because the land,
Because
the
then
land,
that-
the land area is smaller, but the density remains the same based on the neighborhood plan that was already.
Okay. I'm not going to.
That's how I understand it.
I think we got the point. Did we get the point?
You got the point.
We got the point.
And let's see. Oh, and in the architectural design standards, it talks about a mix and everything. I've said this so many times, and I think we saw it, some of us saw it yesterday. You'd not only need a mix of elevations, not to be right together, but you do need it to mix floor plans so that you don't go down the street, and even though it's a different elevation, you say, same floor plan, same floor plan. And I think we saw about 5 homes, and it was 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. They were all the same.
So not Privet Drive.
So. Oh, and in 8, the support uses, it says, if a neighborhood plan contains a planned transit with stop, additional commercial uses and higher density residential up to 12 units per acre, and then we need to put something in there that they can have uses that are in the neighborhood commercial. Because the way they've got the uses now, it's churches and schools, which I agree with, but riding arenas and other things are in that same non-residential units in a residential area. So, and what we're thinking about is a little different than that, I think. More like neighborhood commercial, small businesses. On small
David,
lots.
does this work in section 8 under supported use or support uses on item D? This is if a neighborhood plan contains a planned transit with stop, additional commercial uses and higher density residential development up to 12 units per acre may be considered to support the transit stop. So is that the only permitted commercial use right now is next to the transit stop?
Yeah,
or is there anything else in this whole zone?
Yeah, as far as I remember, it's here, and, when the neighborhood plan comes in, those uses can be identified in that neighborhood plan.
And nothing prevents it. It's just encouraged to do this transit, which I think is
okay.
And I just don't, I want somebody to be able to see different, an example of the small uses that we allow in neighborhood commercial, because those are not put in the MR.
What about like mixed living?
What?
I like that.
Instead of just say residential, then it calls out a type of developer. But if you were to say mixed living, that leaves it so wide open that it could be commercial, it could be residential, it could be anything. Because I agree with you in principle. I just don't see how we could practically require some. But I also agree that maybe the name not scares people off, but they don't even realize that's a possibility. So if you say mixed living, then maybe it incorporates everything.
It would be unique, and then they would look further.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if that helps.
Maybe
you want to put that one down?
Maybe we need to add that to the grid.
Well, it's
that was what I think one of the comments.
Because the grid makes it pretty clear. If I'm coming in to use this zone, I'm going to look to that grid and see what's available.
At least it's permitted.
That would be good to add it to the grid.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all.
Mr. Chair, I'd hate to kill momentum, but can we take a 5-minute break?
Yes. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Okay.
You're going to time us.
Oh, yeah, I am. Set the timer for 5 minutes. You could, but you won't.